to weigh us down. Well, we want to discuss that today, and it is called adult peer pressure. That's right, even us adults can actually go through that. And joining me now is Mofat Kago, who's a counselor psychologist, and you're also a lecturer. That's right, at PAC.
Yeah.
Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you very
It's
much.
good to have you here.
Pleasure.
So now, adult peer pressure. We have this conception that it's something that, teenagers and preteens go through. But in your experience, are you seeing a lot of adults coming and saying, Bana, I'm under peer pressure?
Thank you very much, Joyce. Indeed, peer pressure is not just a phenomenon for small children or adolescents. It also affects grown-ups, adults, and it manifests in many ways, in many forms. But unfortunately, some grown-ups do not know that they are suffering from peer pressure. So it is there. And the moment you find yourself struggling with issues that you never overcame during your younger years, then it's the high time for you to know that this is peer pressure.
So what are some of those issues that, I guess, transcend from adolescence into adulthood? What are some of the common things that you see in your experience?
Peer pressure is when somebody wants to conform to standards or values of a particular group or norms of some other people.
Right.
And many times you realize that many grown-ups struggle with this. For example, and I need to say that peer pressure is two-way. It is positive, can either be positive or negative.
Okay.
So I begin with something negative. For example, you feel like you need to conform to a group, you need to hang out and drink and do all sorts of things, not because you love or you like drinking, but because your friends are calling you so that you can hang out and maybe have a bottle or two.
Yeah.
But some other times you realize peer pressure can also be positive. The moment you realize that a certain group of people are encouraging you to move out from a sort of destructive behavior into something else, maybe quit smoking, and you end up, quitting smoking because they influenced you into that.
Right.
That is positive peer pressure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit more then about the negative peer pressure as
Yeah.
adults.
Yeah.
I guess there's a lot of pressure as far as what you earn, finances as a young person become a big deal when suddenly now you've finished high school, you've finished college, you're out on your own in the big city trying to make it on your own. But of course, life is tough
Yeah.
and things get expensive. So, how can adults kind of begin to manage the pressure that comes with just taking care of yourself and your family, but also trying to keep up with the Joneses, if you will?
There's something we call in psychology external locus of control and internal locus of control. Somebody who succumbs to peer pressure are those people who find themselves using what we are calling external locus of control, which means you you tend to be imprisoned by the opinion of others. And you tend to want to appeal to them. And therefore, you end up finding yourself using money to impress people that you don't like. You use money to impress others who do not even know whether you bought a new car or not, and they are not even interested.
Yes.
So that is one way through which peer pressure can really affect grown-ups, because you are using external locus of control, whereby you are so much conscious and so much focused on what others are saying about you.
Right.
Yes.
So if you're just joining us, we're here with Mofat Kago, who's a counselor psychologist, and we're talking about adult peer pressure. And I'd love to hear from you. I know many of you have been through some situations where you felt under pressure either by your family or your friends about one thing or another. We'd love to hear from you. The SMS line is 22999. You can also reach us on our Facebook and Twitter. That's at Switch TV Kenya, or on Instagram, Switch TV KE. Now, Mofat, coming back to you, another area where we find a lot of pressure as adults comes to relationships. You keep hearing about, hey, Maze, my family is pressuring me to get married, or they're asking, how comes you've not found someone yet, and na. How can we handle these type of situations? Because that pressure comes from everywhere, from family, from colleagues, friends.
Now, in such a situation, I will refer you back to what I have just said, external locus of control and internal locus of control. For someone who is likely, who is able to overcome that pressure
Yes.
from parents, from the society, from the media, because even the media has packaged,
Sure.
Lifestyle that, this is the ideal way of living. This is the car you ought to be driving. This is the fashion you need to keep up with. And for someone to overcome all that, you really need to use what I call, or we call, internal locus of control. And this is where you use the I statement.
Okay.
The I statement. For me, I want this, I want that, I don't want that. That is the only time you are able to overcome that, because again, you need to understand that you don't succumb to pressure, from people who are telling you to get married. But for you, if you are using internal locus of control, I don't get married because I am old, neither do I get married because I am young, neither do I get married because I have achieved this and that.
Right.
I get married because I know it's the right time for me to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some additional tips then you would give us to kind of strengthen, I guess, that internal locus
of control? Yes.
So you've talked about an I statement. What else can our audience and our viewers at home, what other things can they be practicing in their lives that would apply to all these different areas, relationships, finances, whether they're fat or they're small or they're big or they're, whichever. What other tips or practical tools would you give?
The first thing I would say is that people need to really focus on their core values. If you grew up in a family and they instructed you in the positive ways, they told you, you don't do this, you don't do that. In other words, they took part in bringing out or instilling values in you.
Yes.
The best thing is to adhere and to really focus on those core values that you as a person, that I cannot do this, I cannot do A, B, C, D, because this is what I hold as my values.
Right.
Number two is that you also need to expose yourself to people who sort of validate what you do.
Right.
People who would want to support you, to support your values, to support, and people who are going to lead you in a manner that is not going to make you drift from your core values. You need to have people from all ages. And more so, I like also to say that it is important for such a person to make friends with people who have, who are ahead of them, people who are able to guide them. In other words, mentors, having somebody who can mentor you in the positive way. Yes.
In your experience, have you found that either men or women, who do you end up seeing most? Is it men or is it women? And maybe you can talk a bit about some of the different areas that men are really challenged by or that women are really challenged by.
I think in my own experience, I would say that both men and women succumb to peer pressure, but maybe at different levels.
Yes.
But for men, because of the demands and expectations that the society and the family, have on them, they tend to really succumb to peer pressure. Like, for example, when we are dealing with the menace of corruption today, research has it that the middle class, people who are in their 40s, people who are beginning to shape their lives, are the ones who are really into that issue.
Yes.
Because they are saying that the end justifies the means.
Right.
And therefore, once they are given a government position or a public office, it is their moment to steal so that they can conform to what the society has packaged as the ideal man or ideal head of the family or society. And therefore, you realize that men are really exposed. They are so vulnerable to peer pressure more than women. But again, at the same time, we are living at a time whereby women have also been so much empowered. They need to be. They are getting they are saying that what a man can do,
a woman can do better.
And therefore, you realize
which
that
is true in some instances.
To some extent, you realize that once you join your friends and you begin to discuss ABCD, then they put a lot of pressure. I have had cases whereby wives are telling the husband or the husband that you are too slow for life. And the question is, where have you gotten that from?
Now, I have a question here for you. We have a viewer who's texted in and they've said, "Hi, I am pressured by my boyfriend that we should have sex, and I was just a high school leaver, and he wants me to have kids as early as now. And I'm just 19 years old, and I am slowly losing myself. Please help me." What would you tell this dear viewer?
I know according to the Kenyan constitution, another age is somebody who is 18 and below. But I want to again tell this lady that she still has a long way to go. We wouldn't consider her as somebody who is right for all those, to succumb to, who is ready for all those things that the boyfriend is saying that they do. So the best thing for her to do is to remain stuck to her core values, because I can see this is somebody who is really focused, or she knows what she needs.
Knows what she doesn't want.
She doesn't want.
Yes.
And therefore it is very important for her to stick to that.
Yeah.
To be able to know that for me to give in to sex is not the right thing. It's not the right time for me. She really needs to stick to that, because it tells you that her conscience is very much alive.
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Well, thank you so much to you for sending in your question. We're going to be moving on to our next segment very shortly. But first, I just want to thank you again, Mofat. Thank you so much for coming into the show. We appreciate your insights. Adult peer pressure, as Mofat has said, remember your core values, remember who you are, and stick to that. Do not bow down to external pressure. Look internally and see your strength. We're going to be back very shortly after this small break. Keep it locked right here on Full Circle with Joyce.